Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show, more specifically, our series, which is called Parsha and Prose, of which I do together with my very dear friend, the very erudite, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, thank you very much. And I can see that you hanged behind me the pictures of the three hostages who came back. Obviously, every Jew in the world is very happy about it. And Baruch Hashem that they are with us. Can say Baruch Ata Hashem Atir Asurim. And hopefully we will see more and more coming. I think every Jew should be happy about it, about their return. Then at the same time, I must admit that I'm very, very concerned about what will happen with all the barbarians that are freed with lot of blood on their hands. And we know what were the results of the deal with Gilad Shalit. So on one hand, we are the Jewish people, Arevim Zelazeh, and we must return every Jew home. At the same time, I was not part of the festivities, I must say that, because in my heart, I'm worrying about the future and how much blood, Chaz v'Chalila, might spill the result of this deal.
So indeed, we'd like to dedicate the show to the coming home of three of the hostages, Romy Gonen, 24, Emily Damari, 28, and Doron Steinbracher at 31 years old. These three captives were freed a few days ago, and in exchange for 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. Here's an interesting piece I'd like to show you here, Rabbi. You know that Emily Damari, once again, 28 years old, came out, and October 7th, when she was captured, she had two of her fingers shot off. So it's become somewhat of an icon out there. And here they're comparing it to the Cohen's hand signal, which I find very interesting. I too am very happy, obviously, that they're home. I thank God every moment for it. When you watch them embrace their mothers, it was very interesting, by the way, that Israel, when they decided how they were going to set up the whole process of retrieving them and taking them in, they met with their mothers first. Why do you think that is, by the way?
First of all, they learned it from previous times, where first of all they met other people like Shabak and Tzahal and others, and they learned that this was actually increasing the trauma. The only thing that these people want to see, the first thing they want to see, is their family, their parents. So until the last case where the hostages came back after about 60 days, they met first with many people that were not family, but they wanted to get some information and so on, and they saw how bad it influenced them mentally. So they decided to change the whole protocol, and first of all, they see their families. After that, they will be interrogated and asked questions and getting information and so on and so on. So it's based on experience, the terrible experience. But you know what? Just to see these pictures, I know that many soldiers wrote back that just to see these pictures justified their 200, 300 days of miluim to see the reunited families.
But why Imale? I was wondering, why not both parents? Why not the father? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, mother feel different. Remember the 9 months where we spend the time. Apparently, there is a physical connection with the mother more than the father by most people.
Yeah, very, very interesting. But those pictures, those videos were absolutely overwhelming. You think that they were apart from their parents, from their families, from Israel for over 400 days. I was thinking to myself, how deeply does that emotion run to once again to see your mother, to see your father, to see your siblings? I couldn't possibly imagine the level, the depth of their feelings.
And even the Torah pay attention to this aspect, not only by humans, but even by birds and animals. You can see, for example, Shivat Yamim Yeh Tachat Imo. The Torah prohibited taking a lamb or a goat under 7 days, where the mother still feels so close to him, and you take him away from her, or the famous mitzvah of Shiluach HaKam, when you approach a nest with eggs or chicks, and you cannot be rude to the mother who really needs this connection. And there is a formation of connection here between mother and chicks or children or kids. And the Torah appreciates it. The Torah sees it apparently as a very important part of not only human experience, but the world and nature experience.
Rabbi, the very beginning of our show, Parsha and Prose, as of lately, is something we concentrate on what we call SHIVIM PANIM, which is 70 faces of truth, 70 faces of Torah. And within it, we schmooze about life. We talk to each other about our own lives. And we also talk about Torah, Eretz Yisrael, and the Jewish people. I would like to tell our listeners and our viewers that a few days ago, I did an interview with Nir Mammon. Nir Mammon is 48 years old. He lives in Richmond Hill. He was born in Israel. He has 5 children. Is married, beautiful woman, Simone, whom I have also interviewed. And since October 7th, he's been deployed to Gaza and also the West Bank and other such places. And he's fought in Israel as a senior IDF reservist. The fascinating thing about him is because of his connections in America through security, training Krav Maga, being a sheriff in Georgia, he was invited to come to the inauguration as part of the security apparatus. So watch that interview. It's fascinating because there's an Israel part to it. There's a Jewish part to it. And I won't tell you what it is, but he's a highly, highly inspirational individual. And he's out there really representing the Jewish people in a very, very powerful manner. I love when I find Jews and Israelis scattered around the world, spreading the light of the Jewish people. And Nir Mammon does that exactly.
That's wonderful. I'm going to see to watch it hopefully this evening. Wonderful.
Kol hakavod. So I wanted to ask you, Rabbi. I'm doing Daf Yomi, which is a page, both sides of the page, of Talmud every single day for 7.5 years. We're about 4 years in or so, and we're now studying the Masechet, which is called Sanhedrin, and it has to do with courts and judgment. And I was learning it this week on Daf HaChaim, which is where I study it every day through this wonderful Rabbi Schwartzberg. And within it, he does a sort of a review of what the tractate will be all about. And he mentions really compelling parts of the tractate itself, which really encourages you to dive right in and to learn it with tremendous verve and excitement. So one of the things that he talked about is that when a court determines that someone is guilty in capital cases, that they need to sleep on it. They have to sleep on their verdict in order to allow for anything that they might have missed to think about. That's one sort of case or one representation of the incredible sensitivity that Jewish courts have for victims, for people who have done something wrong and have been convicted of it. Another one that is if a person has been found to be guilty and to get skila, which is one of the 4 mitas bezdin, that they walk him for 4 miles away from the court. And within that walk, there's a horseman that is there, excuse me, And it's determined that if somebody comes and they said, look, I know this guy's being convicted, but I'm telling you, I have something to say for schmooze, to say to encourage that he may not be guilty. The court has to stop walking him. They have to bring him back, and they have to reopen the case. And I thought, such sensitivity, even within the court system. You have thoughts on that?
The Torah has a very important rule, even about people who deserve sometimes the capital punishment, and it said "Vehitzilu ha'eda," like it's our responsibility, the Eidah, the community, which represented in this case by the Beidin, by the court. The court is actually a representative of the community, the nation. You try in any way to save the person who's supposed to die. We appreciate life. We appreciate life, and we try everything to do in order to preserve person's life, even if he's a terrible person. That's the reality of it. And another strange law is that when the entire court comes to one decision, everyone in the people and in the Jewish court, it's at least 23 dealing with capital punishment, came to the same conclusion. The verdict is that, and everyone say that he is guilty. The law is reversed in unbelievable way. It's like, no, he is not going to be killed. If you have 22 against 1, he will be killed. 23 against 0, he will not be killed. It's impossible that no one in a court will not see something that might save the life of the person. If they can't see it, something is wrong, not with the person, but with them. So that's, I think, how Jewish people, in light of these pieces of Talmud, came to appreciate life, any life, and are very careful in the life of others.
It's very interesting too, because the Gemara says that in the name of Shmuel bar Nachmani, in the name of Yochanan, that a judge should always see himself as if a sword was lying between his thighs, and that Gehenna is open beneath him. Fascinating. We one of the questions that I have, Rabbi, with so much going on in the world politically and otherwise, is I'm constantly asking myself, why are the Jewish people hated so much? And we have had this discussion. And I thought I would ask you, and I want to get your take on this, sort of go another route with this. What can people do if they're open to it, to not hate, or to not hate so much?
I think the only way is really to try to find the positive sides of everything in the world. It says in Hebrew, you have the word tameh. Tameh means like something that you cannot touch, you cannot eat, you have to separate yourself from. But I saw a long time ago that one of the greatest rabbis, the Sfat Emet, who was the rabbi of the big Hasidut, especially before the Holocaust, he said that the word Tameh is combined of Tet and Mem Tet, like 49, which is a very Kabbalistic, it's 7 times 7 and so on. And you have one Aleph at the end. And he said that even the most disgusting things in the world still have like one little thing that connects them to God, because you cannot imagine a world that even one thing is not somehow connected to God. And therefore the word Tameh represented in the numerical value that you might have like 49 parts of it is like disgusting and you have to separate yourself. But you have to know even this, at the end of the day, have something that connects them to God. We saw people coming from the worst criminals. Their children are amazing. We spoke in the past about Korach and his famous descendant, who was Shmuel Hanavi. The Torah never give up on any person, no matter what. And I think this is also part of it. Like, you must see the productivity in others. And if people, let's say the Jewish people are not perfect. We are human beings. We have our shortcomings like anyone else. But if the world would just look and how much goodness we brought to the world, how much godly values we brought to the world, this would be enough to say, okay, there is something special about these guys. And maybe I don't like this and this and this and this, but this is not a reason to hate them. But, anti-Semitism is not something rational. It's something which is completely irrational. And I'm afraid that we will not be able to convince, people who don't want to be convinced. We have to focus on our friends. And in this world, we have many, many friends. And they come up and they speak up for us. And we have to tie the connections between us and just to ignore and maybe even to accept the fact that some people will not like us.
So Rabbi, what we do here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, sometimes in Parsha and Prose, is it for the non-Jew as well?
Absolutely, yes. The Torah inspires people no matter what. And listen, you have to remember that today you have Christianity and Islam. They were inspired by Jewish thought and values. There is no question about it. The power of Torah is good for everyone. Now, of course, there are parts in the Torah which are unique to the Jewish people because we have a special responsibility. Okay, but many mitzvot of the Torah about how to treat others, about believing God, about the ideas of consequences, should be taught everywhere, to Jews and non-Jews alike, in my opinion.
Before we dive into Parsha and Prose per se, this week's Parsha is Vaera through the lens of the classic novel Exodus. I'm always curious about your life, Rabbi. And I know that last Shabbat, you were on a Shabbaton with your students. How was that?
It was very nice. I
Was
love
it nice?
to be in the Shabbaton. It's a major sacrifice because I have to leave my family. It's not the conditions for a family to be there. But I always, every Shabbat, have these experiences of talking to students. Some of them never experienced real Shabbat. Some of them have a very weak background. They know very little about their Jewish identity, I would say. Many of them are excellent. Many of them just, don't have the background. And it's always so nice to be together and to experience the fun of Shabbat. Singing together, eating together, telling stories, knowing each other. It really creates a sense of a family. And that's why I love to be there.
And are you always on? Like, in other words, are you always looking for the opportunity
Yes.
to give chizuk to a student's strength, to, bring something to them that they may not know otherwise? Are you always on those weekends?
Absolutely, yes. I try to be there. I feel that my self-fulfillment is in these times, in the classroom, obviously. But there is something very nice about being with a person, forget about the marks, forget about the tests, just to be with people. And sometimes you realize that you have incredible young people around you and you know very little about them. And Shabbat is such a wonderful opportunity to learn about their family, about their grandparents, about what motivates them in life. And yes, I'm looking for these opportunities. I actually would say that if someone will ask me what is my greatest impact or when do I have my greatest impact is in these informal activities that really brings people together, not on intellectual way like it happened in the classroom, but more relationship. that you create with people on this day. And to me, there is no question that Shabbat, one of the purposes of Shabbat is certainly to create this unity, this feeling of community, and we try to do it.
Yesterday, my son Noah took me to a volunteer opportunity at Baycrest, a seniors' home here in Toronto, very well known. And essentially, what we were doing there was packing bags for the homeless, and for Via Hafta, an organization here in Toronto that reaches out to the impoverished and those people living on or near the street. And we did it in concert with some of the seniors at the home itself. And I was sitting around the table prior to our work. They brought food from Tovli, just very good Middle Eastern food, falafel, v'chulu. And I was talking to the kids, and one's studying linguistics at York University, the other studying mechanical engineering. And I have to tell you something, these are such beautiful kids, such beautiful spirits. It was so nice to listen to them and be part of their world for a very, very short while. And I thought their minds are so fertile and their neshama is just so beautiful that I felt very, very young.
Completely agree. And they are not yet corrupted by the world around them. They are not like driven by money and positions and so on. They still in a very innocent stage of what life is really about: friends, helping others, seeing the plight of others. So there is something very unique in working with young people. And I always tell them, my bracha to you is that stay as you are. Don't let the world around you to corrupt you.
Yeah, that's a lovely blessing, and I concur with that. I know I've asked you this question before, but maybe I'll revisit it because you work with such young people. Because thank God you have many children and grandchildren. Inside, you feel childlike in nature?
Yes, you must. Because if you cannot think through the person that you try to build relationship with and to educate, you will not be able to do it.
Yeah.
You will not be able to do it, period. And therefore, we always tell our teachers, plan well your lesson, be creative. But the most important thing, from the first moment you enter the class, create relationship with your students. In the old times, there was a rule: don't smile to your students until Christmas. Like, first of all, build your authority and then, start smiling to them. And I tell my teachers, you enter the class, put a big smile on your face. Because if you want to control the kids and you are going to smile to them on Christmas, maybe you are not going to last in the class until Christmas. Maybe this was a good advice for the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century. It's not going to work today. Today, education is built on good, healthy, nourishing relationships.
Have you had students that you just could not relate to, that you could just not form a relationship with?
Listen, you always have people that are more reserved. They are not going to give themselves outside, which I fully respect. I never try to open up someone. I actually hate even this idea. People are growing. They have their world. You don't know what traumas they went through. Don't try to open them. But I would say the following. The moment you give a person a sense of trust, a sense of security, he will open up to you. Even the people who are evolutionists will tell you that the simple gesture of giving you a hand come to show that you don't hold any sword or arm in your hand. So you show an empty hand and you shake the other person's hand. It gives a sense of security and trust, which is very interesting. But I do think that, especially students, they feel right away that they can trust their teacher. They trust the person or distrust him. And this is an immediate way to relate to students. And there are students who it's harder to gain their trust, for sure.
Do you relate well to adults as well?
Absolutely.
You do.
Adults, yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Okay.
When people are adults, listen, I have a theory that people stuck somewhere in the age of 18, whoever they were in 18, they maybe learn how to cover up or to do certain things when they are 50 and 60 because life teaches them lessons, but people don't change inside so much, unfortunately. Most people. Sometimes I see my friends after a long time that I didn't see them, and I say, "Whoa, I remember you when you were 18. You haven't changed." So yes, now it's a white hair. Now, you have a great position, but like inside, nothing have changed.
I love that. In an interview, by the way, when I'm interviewing somebody and I see that they're a little bit pent up, anal, we call them, right? I really, really work. I try very hard to make them smile, to make them laugh. And when I'm able to do it, you see the young side of them come out, and then everything illuminates on the screen, right? It's very, very beautiful. So we're doing Parsha and Prose, ladies and gentlemen, and the Parsha this week is Parsha Vaera. We're doing it through the lens of Exodus. Let me tell you a little bit about both. Parsha Vaera is the second Torah portion in the book of Exodus, covering Exodus 6:2, 9:35. In this portion, the narrative takes a pivotal turn as God reveals more of his divine plan to Moses and the Israelites. It begins with God reassuring Moses that he will fulfill his promise to liberate the Israelites from their enslavement in Egypt. God expands on his covenantal name, emphasizing his eternal nature and commitment he made to the patriarchs. Moses, still grappling with his own personal doubt and the people's resistance, he returns to Pharaoh to demand the release of the Israelites. This leads to a series of dramatic confrontation between Moses and Aaron and Pharaoh, where the first plagues are unleashed upon Egypt in response to Pharaoh's hardened heart. These plagues serve as a powerful sign of God's sovereignty and judgment, signaling the beginning of Israelites' journey toward freedom. Parsha Vaera is a turning point in the Exodus narrative, marked by God's increasing intervention in history, setting the stage for the ultimate redemption of the Israelites. And the portion underscores themes of divine promise, persistence, and the struggle for freedom, providing lessons that resonate across generations. And then we have the book Exodus, which was written by Leon Uris. The novel, it's an epic story of the founding of the modern state of Israel, blending historical events with compelling characters and personal struggles. Set against the backdrop of World War II and the aftermath of the Holocaust, the novel follows a diverse group of Jewish characters as they fight for survival and a homeland in Palestine. Through the journey of Ari Ben Canaan, a dedicated Israel fighter, and the stories of those around him, Uris explores themes of identity, survival, sacrifice, and the deep yearning once again for freedom and justice. Exodus brings to life the turbulent period leading to the establishment of Israel in 1948, highlighting both the intense conflicts and the profound hope that shaped the nation's creations. Well, why did you bring these two together, Rabbi?
Again, this time is one of the books which is quite obvious because they share so many common themes. If you talk about leadership in times of crisis, both stories highlight this idea. You have the idea of faith, chazon, vision, resilience, um, oppression, and the hope for redemption. And with no question, you have many parallels between the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of leaving Egypt, and everything that was on the process, the final redemption, and what happened with Medinat Israel. One of the beautiful gifts I got for my bris was the person who brought me Haggadah Shel Pesach that I still use until this very day, many years later. And the Haggadah is illustrated. This was like the times of the 50s. I believe maybe it was illustrated in 52, 53, showing the psukim of the Haggadah, but the illustrations are kibbutzim and a picture that remind you the Holocaust. So every year, every single year, I love to see this Haggadah because it makes the old story of Exodus to the modern story of Medinat Israel, which Leon Uris, I believe, called it Exodus to draw this parallel between the two stories. And in a way, I must tell you that I don't know what is a greater story. And I know that it sounds very sharp and unexpected, but this is not my idea. Our sages are telling us that Le'atid Lavo, in the days to come, we are not going to say the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim anymore. We are going to tell the story of the future redemption. And I always was troubled by it. Why? Why is it so? Like, this is such an incredible story. How is it possible that we one day will not remember the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim? But we have to remember that the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim was completely done by God. The involvement of the Jewish people in the story of redemption was very minimal. The modern story of Medinat Israel is a story that, in a way, we participate with God. We took the initiative, we moved the people, we built, we sacrificed enormously to have our land. So at the end of the day, which one is a more epic story? That's a good question. And to me, I believe that maybe 100 years down the road, 1,000 years down the road, people will appreciate the story of Medinat Israel not less than the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim.
Just on a personal basis, I believe that the world is divided into two: those who keep their svarim, their agada for Pesach, pristine, and then are others who celebrate a drop of grape juice or wine in the pages, so that they come back to it a year later. They open it up, they go, yes, I remember this. Which one are you?
Absolutely the second, the latter one. My agada is full with stains of wine, and always you can find matzah from, maybe I should send it to the museum, like matzah from the 60s, 70s. And I actually draw lots of pleasure when I see that one of my grandchildren is staining the agada too. Like, the more stained, the merrier.
I totally agree. That's who I am as well. My father wasn't like that. He liked the very pristine nature of Svarim. When I study, let's say I have a chumash that I use all the time, I'll actually underline things in the chumash. He wasn't like that.
So I'll tell you a very interesting story about it. I think I mentioned the name of Reb Chaim Brisker, who was the Gaon in Europe about 100 years ago, a little bit more. And he was a very noted Rosh Yeshiva, and he wrote one book, which is not like, a whole encyclopedia. It's a short book relatively to others, but made a huge difference in the way people learn in the yeshivot until this very day. Chidushei Rabbeinu Chaim Halevi. And once he went to visit a Hasidic yeshiva, and they wanted to gift him with something. So you know what they brought him? They brought him the book that they had in their library, Chidushei Rabbi Chaim Halevi, where the pages were like crumbled and torn in certain places. And he said, I never got such a beautiful gift, because that shows that everyone learning it. And when you learn in a book, like, you are going to damage it. But for an author, it's the greatest compliment. And our Haggadot are the same, it's like, the more you learn it, the more you read it, the more you use them around the table, this is a great sign of continuity.
Lovely. My grandmother used to say that if two people say you're not looking well, you should lie down. I always feel that when things come my way twice or three times in the course of a week, that I should investigate a little bit. So I want to ask you very quickly, before we move on with Parsha and Prose, I just did an interview with Rabbi Yoni Rosensweig, and we talked about the Brisker way of learning. There are many different ways of learning Torah, and yeshivot will incorporate them into their modus operandi of education. Well, what is the Brisker way, Rabbi?
I will say the Brisker way, for people who maybe never experienced it, is to understand the principles behind the laws of the Torah, of the Talmud. When you open a piece of Talmud, you will see many stories. You will see many, even the laws are about like a bull that gored another animal and how much. So this is one way just to see it as stories and their outcome and what is the law. The Brisker way is to see, okay, wait a second. Why actually a person who had a bull and not himself, he's a very innocent and wonderful person, what actually makes him liable for the damages of his property? And this is a completely different way of thinking, because sometimes you might come to situations where the principle is not met by the situation. So Chaim Brisker always try to take like the logic behind it. What is the formula that actually run the whole story here? And it makes the learning to such a logical, profound way to look to the principles and not to the case itself, that it changed entirely the world of learning. So this is, of course, like, on a sample or a very little taste, flavor of what Brisk is all about. I would say taking it to the realm of pure logic.
Are you a Brisker at all?
I wouldn't say that, but I would say that learning years, the way of thinking, it influences the way you think about many things. You don't focus on a person, you don't focus anymore on a government, you don't focus on a country. You ask yourself a very, very basic question. Okay, this is America. What are the principles behind this country? So you start talking about freedom and choices and respect to every person. So you don't see anymore like America and the stripes and the star. They are all very, very important. But you go directly to the principle that move or behind everything else that you see. And that's a way of Brisk to see things. Like go to the root of everything.
Is there a central motif as to how you learn? If somebody said to you, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara, what is your approach to learning? Do you have a word for it? Do you have a name for it?
I wouldn't say that, but I really was heavily influenced by this method of learning that tried to find, okay, what is behind it? What is this story really all about? So in a way, I took major parts of Brisk and applied them to the way I think. Where whenever I read any text, that's the reality of any text. And I believe, here in chat, we have many students who want to learn Talmud. They somehow believe that it's a good preparation for being a lawyer, and it might be. It might be because we treat text with great respect. And we always ask questions beyond the text, beyond the case, beyond the person who said it. We try to understand the principle behind the law. So I would say that I took this method and this principle and applied it in my own learning. But my own method, no. This will be just not true. I'm a product of many teachers that I had in my life, but especially influenced by the yeshiva world, where you really try to get to delve into what is behind everything that you learn.
Okay. Rabbi, Pharaoh's heart is repeatedly hardened in Vaera, repeatedly, despite the signs and wonders performed by Moses and Aaron. In Exodus, we see sort of a similar intransigent from political leaders opposed to the establishment of the state of Israel. How do the attitudes of Pharaoh and the British authorities in the novel reflect the challenges of overcoming entrenched opposition to Jewish aspirations?
You just made the right parallel. And when people hold power, sometimes they exercise it in a very wrong way. Listen, Pharaoh could be one of the greatest personalities in Jewish history. Just imagine that Moshe Rabbeinu would come to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh would say, you know what? It's the first time that I hear that maybe I'm not like the god of Egypt or the world. Maybe there is something behind it. And he will say, you know what? I made mistake. I slaved people who have a full right to be their own. You know, we would mention Pharaoh with great admiration until this very day. Until this very day, Koresh, the Persian king, is someone that we admire. You know, the Persian Jews, the Iraqi Jews were next. Many of their children are named Koresh. It's not so common in the Ashkenazic world or the North African world, but the people who grow in Iraq and Iran, they still remember Koresh as not a Jewish king, but we remember him with a great admiration. Pharaoh could be the same, and you would see many little children running on the street with the same Pharaoh. Like you see many people on the street with the same Alex or Alexander or Sender. They're all named after great Alexander, because he was accommodating the Jews. He listened to them. He gave them certain degrees of freedom. What the two stories about the Brits and about Pharaoh is a story of making choices, and you see it until this very day, where countries like Ireland made a choice to be against the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. When you see other countries who stand side by side, or individuals who stand side by side with Israel. The Torah is teaching us something very, very important. It's about choices. You can do the right choice and you can do the wrong choice. And sometimes it's not easy. I believe that what it means that Hashem hardened the heart of Pharaoh, he gave him lots of reasons not to make decisions. But when you are a great person, when you are the emperor of Egypt, you have the responsibility sometimes to take a pause and to make the right decisions. It's not easy for an emperor because sometimes it's an issue of ego, control, exercising power, but the expectations of God, and not only from the Jewish people, from every person in the world, because every person was created in the image of God, is to take the time to think about what is right and what is wrong. And unfortunately, most time, people succumb to their own power, and instead of doing good things with it, they just control others. Can you imagine, like the Brits, like not allowing Jews who just came from the camps to come to their land? How can you explain it? And these are people who already, like Dov in the story of Exodus, lost his family, lost everything. He just wants to go back to the land of his forefathers. And many, many times I think, like, who was worse? Okay, you don't push people into the gas chambers, but still you don't have the empathy to the people who just managed to escape the worst of the history of the world. And what they want is just to rebuild their land and to be united with their historic land. And you don't let them, just because you have the power and you have some other commitment to the Arab countries and to the Arabs in Israel. And for this, you don't let Jews to come back to Israel after everything they went through. So yes, every generation has its own powers.
Rabbi, I just want to clarify a little bit about the concept of the hardened heart. Maimonides interprets God's hardening of Pharaoh's heart as meaning that repentance was withheld from him, and the liberty to turn from his wickedness was not afforded him. The Albo in Sephorna says God hardened Pharaoh's heart actually to restore his free will. Do you want to riff on those two ideas for a second?
So first of all, I would say that this is one of the greatest questions about free will, and what does it mean that Hashem hardened the the heart of Pharaoh. I think what you allude to is that free will has to be completely balanced. You have the choice to do this and to do that. In the story of the plagues in Egypt, the plagues were supposed to tip Pharaoh to say yes, but this will take away the free will. So in order to rebalance it, that he will not do it just because the plagues, but to do it because he understands that this is the right thing to do. Hashem had to harden his heart to keep the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when we will get to very tough decisions that we have to make, we will find many reasons not to do the right thing. And this is what the Torah means, that Hashem hardened our heart. He gives us many or ample of reasons why not to do the right thing, because Hashem wants us to be like human beings, to be giborim, to be really gibor, and to make the right decision because this is the right decision, not because you are forced to do the right decision.
In Vaera, Moses doubts his ability to lead the of Egypt. How does Moses' hesitation in the Torah portion compare to the doubts and the struggles faced by the characters in Exodus, such as Ari Ben Canaan, which is a great name that Leon Uris gave him, or the other leaders of the Zionist movement?
This is a fantastic question, because I think here the Torah again give us such an important lesson for any leadership, for any situation in life. Nothing will come in our life easy. We will have to struggle, first of all, with ourselves. We are going to have many doubts. Are we capable of achieving it? And again, it can be in the academic field, it can be at the nation, it can be an individual who set goals to herself or to himself. And the Torah is telling us that even the greatest of all, Moshe Rabbeinu, had his own doubts about his capability, about what will happen next, how he's going to deal with huge powers like Pharaoh, like Egypt. And because of these doubts, because sometimes you will have to overcome your own internal struggles, that's what will make you a great leader. A great leader is not someone that everything is clear to him, he is free of any doubt, he knows exactly what to do and how to do it. That's actually a very bad sign for a leader, most likely a failure in the future. A great leader is someone that has hesitation, has doubts, and managed to overcome them, or by a plan, or by strengthening his heart, his own heart. And this is true about the people who build Medinat Israel too. Listen, what kind of pressure even the State Department of America put on Ben Gurion not to declare Medinat Israel. You know, just read today. Everything is like available on the internet. They put unbelievable pressure on the leaders of Medinat Israel not to declare it. They say it's going to lead immediately the Arabs to attack Israel, which happened, by the way. One of the miracles of Medinat Israel was that the people say, no, we stand to the pressure and we declare Medinat Israel. And that's why it was pushed mamash until almost Shabbat. So there will be no choice. You know, today I guess that like many of the, maybe the religious or the Haredi people, we can wait until Sunday. Ben Gurion was afraid of this one. If you are not going to make the decisions right away, you will not have Medinat Israel. And one of the miracles was that he overcome all the doubts, all the questions, all the concerns, which were real. They were real. And said, we are going to declare Medinat Israel on this very day. We are not going to wait even 1 second.
I am always mesmerized by the level of pressure that these leaders are under. I had the chance to sit with former Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Shamir, actually for a couple of days. I spent with him when I worked for the United Jewish Appeal. And I have to tell you, Rabbi, this man was in a completely different zone than certainly me and most people that I've ever met. You could see that he has dealt with the pressures of determination of the future of the Jewish people. And I was talked to him, and we had a conversation indeed, but it was on such a different level than I would normally have. It was phenomenal.
And I would say all the people who were the founders of Israel were people like this. If you take Ben Gurion, if you take Menachem Begin, if you take Yair, these people, as you said very well, lived on a different zone. I do believe they lived not a life of a person 70 years old or at the time 50 years old, but people who lived 5,000 years old.
Yeah.
They felt that the entire history is lying on their frail shoulders. And you know what? We are very lucky that we have this kind of leadership, because otherwise we would not have any Israel today.
Rabbi, there's a beautiful quote from Leon Uris's book, Exodus, of which we speak today. He says, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you." Is there something Torah in there? Is there something Jewish in there?
It's a
The
beautiful
untold
quote.
story. Yeah, it's a beautiful quote.
I would just say and repeat in a way what Rabbi Sachs used to say, that we are a nation of storytellers. We have a mitzvah to tell the story. You know, I don't know about buried stories, but the interesting thing is that actually even the buried part of our stories are mentioned in the Haggadah. You know, no one want to say, you know, my grandfather was you know, a nutcase or something like this, but we say it on the Haggadah Shel Pesach, מתחילה עובדי עבודה זרה היו אבותינו. Like we start the Seder night, we're telling that, you know, we did, our yichus is a little bit problematic here, because our real forefathers, the father of Abraham, was Oved Avodah Zarah. If I would have to write the Haggadah, I think I would like to bury this story.
Yeah.
But I think a real redemption is actually not to bury this kind of story. You have to know the truth about yourself, where you came from, and to be very proud how you managed to change history from a person who came from such a family and to turn it to a torch of light to the entire world. So I don't think that that's the meaning of the quote, but I would say telling stories is something that maybe is responsible more than anything else to our success as a nation. And I want to share with you something very interesting. I work now on a new course here in Tannenbaum Chat, and I was in touch with some people in Israel about developing it. And the lady, very smart, very sharp, she shared with me a research about resilience of people, especially after October 7th. And they found something fascinating. They found that kids that their parents told them about the family, about ups and downs in the history of the family, were so much more prepared for everything that they went through since October 7th, compared to kids who never heard about the family story, who were their grandparents, what they went through. And if you put it on a national scale, that's exactly what we are doing in Pesach. We tell our kids, you should know, we had our ups, we had our downs, we are maybe in the middle of a down cycle, but we always, לשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה. Always, hope was not something of luxury for the Jewish people. It was the foundation of their presence, always looking to the future. And I think it's a very, very important idea. you talk about a quote from Exodus. So one quote that drew my attention: to be a Jew is to carry the weight of history and the promise of tomorrow. And to me, like the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim and the story of the modern Jewish history is exactly that. We know our history, but our eye is always towards tomorrow. And this is our foundation. Knowing the story give us the strength to look further tomorrow, even after October 7th, after the Holocaust, after terrible wars. Our eye is always for the future, taking strength, great strength from the past.
Rabbi, the way that I interpreted the untold story part of that quote is that I often wonder that when a person passes away, and in my mind, they haven't maximized the gift inside of them, is it appropriate to say chaval? Or should one say the untold story, it's not really my business. It's more up to God. How they live their lives is how God wanted them to live their lives. So succinctly put, is there an aspect of our life that when we leave this earth and we haven't accomplished it, is that too bad? Or is that no. What we did is what we were supposed to do.
This is a very philosophical question and very important one that I believe that everyone at a certain age start to struggle. Like, what do I leave behind me? What kind of legacy? Did I fulfill my potential or not? Our Chazal had a beautiful a parable about it. And, Shlomo HaMelech said, Tov Yom HaMavet miyom hivaldo. It's better, the day of death is a greater one than the day of being born. And our Chachamim said that Mashal, it's a parable to two sheep. One is leaving the port and one is coming back after a long journey. Which one is like bring with her a greater story? Well, when you leave the port, everyone is happy and everyone is like have a good mood, and you think about all the adventure that you are going to have on the road. But this ship, this boat that coming back after a long journey, she fulfilled the potential. Right? Usually the people are already like homesick and they want to see their family, then their mood maybe is not so great and you don't know what they went through, but they fulfilled the potential. They went to bring certain trade and they brought it back. And it's very much like Yom HaMavet miyom hivaldo. The day we end our life is the day that there is no potential anymore. You just tested by what you did, what you left behind you. So everyone is very happy when a baby was born because it's 100% potential. But we have to remember, along our life, the potential has to be fulfilled. God did not. I always say, if a teacher tells you that your child have lots of potential, take it very like as a bad remark, because okay, school is about fulfilling your potential, not having potential. And the truth is about our life. Like having potential is very nice, but we have to fulfill this potential.
The Torah describes the Israelites, the Bnei Israel's groaning in despair as they endure slavery. How does the portrayal of Jewish suffering in Vaera resonate with the experience of the Jewish people in Exodus, particularly in relationship to the trauma of the Holocaust?
I would say completely similar. You talk to people who was stripped of everything they had. Eved is not only their hard labor.
Yeah.
It's about the family. And our sages are telling us some story that, why Moshe killed the Egyptians, because he knew the story behind the story, that this guy raped a Israelite lady when she thought it's her husband. It's like complete control over your life. And it's not only the hard labor. what did the Nazis try to do by writing a number on the arm of people? No names, no personalities. They are just numbers. They have no identity. And this is a much harder experience when for years you lost your identity. And nevertheless, not the Jewish people in Egypt lost completely their identity. They didn't. They stayed as a nation. They were ready for redemption. And the people that left Auschwitz, Treblinka, Europe, after a great suffering, one of the most moving clips that you can find anywhere is the people who were freed from Bergen-Belsen. And few minutes after their redemption, they stood up and sang Hatikva. You can see it on YouTube. Put Google Bergen-Belsen Hatikva and you will get it. And to me, this is like, wow, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable that these people who just came from the ashes are able to see, after losing everything they had, the future. So in this term, to me, the Holocaust is just, I'm sorry to say, it's reenactment of what happened in Egypt. It's a story of taking everything from the Jewish people and nevertheless never able to break their spirit. You have few years after the Holocaust, a new beginning in Medinat Israel. Today it's a leading country in many areas, still having many troubles, but it's a story of redemption, not of suffering and losing your spirit.
Well, Rabbi, where does that come from? The Jewish spirit. Where does it come from that our spirit's never been broken?
I'll tell you what I think. There is a major question that many people don't ask themselves, and maybe we are afraid to ask ourselves. We thank God for taking us out of Mitzrayim and the 10 plagues and the beautiful journey until we arrive to the land of Israel. But I always have a very simple question. Isn't it better that we would not even suffering all this? God put us in Egypt and then, wow, we have to praise him for taking us out. Wouldn't it be much smarter that he would not put us there for the first place?
Great question.
It's a great question. I listened to parts of Trump inauguration speech yesterday, and he said, we are going to determine the wars and to do this, and we are going to create a situation where people are not even going to a war, which is a very smart remark. Sometimes the best victory is not to get into a war. So why Hashem get into this suffering of Egypt? And I ask myself many times this question, which is a very basic question. You pray the person after, like, you caused him unbelievable suffering for 400 years. But I think that this is part of God's wisdom. God knew that he's going to give his people the Torah. He knew that they are going to have a major role in humanity, in the world. And when you carry such a mission, you need to have special powers. In the army, we always look, I was part of selected unit, but I was not part of Sayeret. Sayeret means like the special unit in Tzal. And whenever we coordinated with them, we always looked at them like, wow, like super people, superhumans, supermen. But you know what they went through in order to be like this, like Navy SEALs or Shayetet or Sayeret Matkal? These guys are going through a torture days and nights. Many nights they don't sleep. They are running like tens of kilometers. And they carry on them like the stretchers with the person on it. They go through a terrible time until they become the people they are, the people that can fulfill almost every tasks they have to do. And to me, the time in Egypt was the time of the Sayeret, the Jewish Sayeret. If you want to build the character, well, people has to go through a lot. And that's the story of Egypt. And if you ask me how people in 2025, I saw yesterday like the girls coming from captivity. I was prepared for people who are broken, who, mentally are struggling. You will not see a smile on their face. And these people just run outside, out of the ambulances of the Red Cross, hugging people. You see all the happiness on their face. How is that possible after everything that they went through? And they went through a lot. I'm telling you that their spirit was welded and created in Egypt many, many years ago. And it goes with the Jewish people. No one will be able to break our spirit. No one.
I recommend very strongly to our listeners and our viewers to go on YouTube and watch an interview or interviews with Sapir Cohen. Sapir is Sapir. She was a hostage in Gaza for 55 days, I believe. And in essence, in a nutshell, you speak about the Jewish spirit. She decided that when she went into Gaza and she went into the tunnels, that she was going to find purpose in it. And she looked around and she thought to herself, why am I here? What can I do with this time? And in response to other hostages who were lying on the ground shaking, were going through so much, she would go up to them. She goes, well, what's wrong? They go, well, Sapir, what do you mean, what's wrong? They said, we're here. We're hostages in Gaza. We're hostages in the tunnel. She said, okay, let's figure it out. Let's work it out. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what we can do while we're here of purpose. This is a phenomenal neshama. It's a phenomenal spirit. She said, Rabbi, there were cats where they were. And we all know that in Israel and Gaza and the area, there's an infestation of cats. There always has been. She says what she did was she pushed a few of the kittens, the cats, towards the terrorists who were watching over them, because she wanted to see which one of the terrorists had a sensitivity for the cat. Mashu, no?
Sapir Cohen was here in chat talking to our students.
Oh, was she?
Avrum, this was amazing. At the end of her speech, first of all, so many students came to her and hugged her. She spoke in an unbelievable way, and I told her, Sapir, you should know, I'm one of the rabbis here. I'm one of the teachers. What you did in half an hour to our students, we would not be able to do in years.
Yes.
Hearing her story, the Jewish part and the personal part was like a source of inspiration. Every student who heard her speaking here can mark his life before and after, because you cannot be the same person after we heard her. Unbelievable.
She said when she pushed the kittens, the cats, towards the terrorists, they were all most of them were very violent towards the kittens, kicked them, pushed them. But she said there was one who actually pet the cat. And that's the one she developed a relationship with to try to further things for her and the other hostages. I love what you're saying is that you determine your life before Sapir and after Sapir. Listen to her interviews because you will grow spiritually through what she has to say. Just a brilliant, brilliant human being and very conscious and very aware. Rabbi, I want to conclude Parsha and Prose with a prayer for the hostages who are still in Gaza. According to the news, there are 4 women who are coming out this Shabbat. God willing, that shall be the case, and they will be well. And the prayer goes as follows. May the one who bless our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their families swiftly and soon. And let us all say amen.
Amen.
Now, next week, Rabbi, we are learning Parsha Bo, and we're doing it through the lens of a book called Pharaoh. Do you want to tell us just in short about that?
This is a beautiful story about, actually, it's supposed to be like historical account of what is who are the pharaohs, what drove the philosophy of such an empire. Through a fictional story and based on many historical things. So, if you remember, Avrum, we spoke about I Claudius and how through the life of Claudius we got insight into the Roman emperor's life. And something very similar is maybe, I think we will do next week. We have to understand what was Egypt, what drove them, and what kind. Only when you understand like the power of Egypt and what they represent, you start to appreciate the story of Parshat Bo and Beshalach and the mighty hand of God that managed to take slaves from a nation that saw themselves like owning the world. And at the end of the day, they saw this is not the case. So I certainly encourage everyone to see the book. I think you will read every time, every year, when you read Shmot, Vaera, Bo, in a very different way, the mighty hand of God. You will start to appreciate it differently. Because the Torah does not tell us too much about it. We just know that Pharaoh was an emperor and he was like bad to the Jews. But it's going much, much deeper than that. And I think that once you read it and understand it, and hopefully we'll expand upon it next week, you will understand what kind of mission Moshe and Aaron had. It was not just against the person. It was against the whole philosophy and the whole way of life that Hashem decided to put aside. It's going to be interesting.
You know, Rabbi, I'm always intrigued how you put the Parsha together with classic literature and novels, and I know that you spend a lot of time on it. And just succinctly put, before we wrap up, you're welcome. It seems to me that you see life in terms of tapestries and patterns. Is that correct?
Yes, especially when it comes to history. When I read, you know, for example, the speech of Trump that happened yesterday. I don't read the speech of Trump. I try to see where did they read it in the Torah, what kind of stories in the Tanakh are behind this, and it gives me some wisdom into it. It gives me some deeper understanding of what I read in the newspaper or watching the TV. And I find it very enriching because usually I don't see something new. I see something that repeats itself. And you're right. I try, and this is maybe part of being a little bit influenced by Brisker, is not to see just the president or the 47th president or the 46th president, but to talk about powers, about drives, about what really create a great country, what kind of people are required to create a great country. So you're right. I see the world as patterns. I never see something which is like, whoa, this is a new phenomenon. No, it already happened. I just have to find where.
What about the landing on the moon?
Well, first of all, it's passé. Now we are talking about landing on Mars. You know, Elon Musk yesterday mentioned that this is the future of society. We don't have time to develop it, but I did not like the speech of Trump yesterday, and not of Elon Musk. I don't believe that America is only about like reaching the moon or Mars. Because stories like this, by the way, appears in the Bible. Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylonian, the Babylonian king, is described as someone who put his nest among the stars. Okay, of course, it's not literal. Today, you really can put like your nest, which is this little shuttle in the between stars. But I think the Tanakh saw the mighty power of human being for achievement. But at the end, he said, you know, you can put your nest over there. Eventually, you are going to be controlled by a higher power, the power of God, the power of morality. Because you can reach a lot. But if you are corrupted within yourself, like, or the society is corrupt, you will achieve nothing. You will crumple in. That's what happened to all the great empire, including the Roman Empire that I admire on many levels. But once they were corrupt, not their army, not the land they conquered, not the beautiful monument that they built, nothing left. The Jewish people build palaces of spirit, palaces of wisdom. That's last. Beit HaMikdash did not last, but what we created, the Talmud, the Torah, the Mishnah, they last and we last forever. And hearing yesterday in the speech a lot about the power of America, I really appreciate it. But we have to remember that the power of America comes from the founder, father spirit, which was fear of God, which was respect to every human being, was based on freedom of every person and the same the equality, the real equality for every person. And missing this was to me like, okay, go be beyond the money and beyond the America is great again. If you are not going to talk about the spirit, being on Mars means very little.
Very good. There's a lot of discussion around the various different constitutions, the evolution of countries, of nations, and what their the genesis, the roots of those countries were, and why some survived and some did not. And general, basically, the discussion is that America has survived and is a strong country versus, let's say, the former Soviet Union, because America's constitution is predicated on God, right?
I completely agree with it. Completely.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to conclude with a poem from AI.
Really?
A poem of redemption and of struggle. You know, Rabbi, the first thought that comes to mind is one day I'll stop doing this. In Vaera, God's voice did call to Moses frail and against all. I am the Lord, he said with might, I'll free my people from their plight. Through plagues and signs, the path was clear, yet Pharaoh's heart would not adhere. A promise made to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, throughout the land, a covenant of strength and grace, a land, a home for the chosen race. In Egypt's chains they wept and cried, but hope was born, and they did not hide. Far away through time and space, in Exodus, a modern race, with dreams of lands their hearts had known, a place to call their very own. From ashes cold, from pain and grief, they sought a home, a firm belief. Ari's heart, like Moses' cry, yearned for the stars to reach the sky, for freedom's fight, for life renewed, for strength to build, for hearts to be true. Through blood and fire they would rise to see the promise in their eyes. The Torah speaks of ancient days of miracles and plagues ablaze, while Uris paints with words so bold a nation's birth is story told. In Vaera faith was sown, in Exodus it is fully grown. A legacy of struggle vast, of freedom's price of shadows past. Yet from those chains the people's freed to plant the future's sacred seed. From Pharaoh's heart to London shore, the dream persists forevermore. By the way, I want you to know that I am a purveyor of humankind. I like nothing more than being in an audience or speaking to an audience and watching the people and seeing what their response is. And I have to tell you, when I read these poems from AI, I watch you and I'm telling you, you're listening. You're listening. Your mouth is open.
You're like this. I always like wonder like where it's all going to lead us, because it became more and more humane in a way, and it's a little bit frightening, you know.
It is, granted. But I guess the real point is I like the way you listen. You're a good listener. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish everybody a beautiful week, and soon we'll start preparing for Shabbat, and much luck in your preparations, and have a beautiful Shabbat until we meet again next Tuesday when we revisit the Parsha once again through classic literature. I want to thank my very dear friend and my colleague, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. Rabbi, I have to tell you something. While this is a podcast and hundreds and sometimes a few thousand people are tuning in, I feel as though you and I are having a chavrusa, and I really want to thank you for that, because it's one of the highlights of my week. I just love learning with you. I love listening to you, and I love sharing ideas with you. So kol hakavod to you.
Thank you very much. And you know, when we talk, I try to ignore the fact that like a camera is recording it, because I really want it to be this way, that we just schmooze and learn together and exchange ideas. I think it's the best way, and so I actually have to thank you and the listeners that give us wonderful feedback, that telling me that, you know, it's worthwhile sometimes to sacrifice some time, some effort. So thank you, Avrum, first of all, and thank you, the listeners. And please give us a feedback. It's important. It makes us feeling much better.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yisroel Chai, proud to be a Jew. God willing, all the hostages should be released as soon as today. Amen. And until we meet again, as I gesund, as they say in the vernacular, go in health. We will see you again soon.